What I would say in my adult life is that I realized because of where I was coming from, I felt like I was an underdog. I was not going to make it in life. And I required to be very diligent, determined, and have discipline. So I really worked at that time. So, graduated from campus, and I'm job hunting. So I got a very nice job. I was earning 25,000. That was good money. And it was a professional services firm. It was actually an audit firm. I was only there for 6 months, so it's not on my CV, if you have to look for it. But what I realized was that there were two kinds of people who were recruited to work for that audit firm. There were those people who had done CPAs, and they went to be auditors and all that. And there were us, so I think there were 4 of us, who had done a Bachelor of Education and were being recruited to be personal assistants to the partners there. And I remember going to work, and the first day, induction, day number 1, we were told, do not think that you will cross to audit or tax. This is your career. Even if you do not think that because if you go to school, you'll be able to cross and become an accountant, this is a career path you've chosen. You will become a personal assistant, and we were shown a long line of personal assistants that had been in the business for over 15 years. So I was like, okay, food for thought, 25,000 is not bad money. So I decided to work. So imagine every morning we would walk through the reception, and the people in my class, maybe if I was in class with somebody who had done a Bachelor of Education degree, but did a CPA, had a CPA qualification, they basically would go through the same entrance, but then they're on their way up to a professional career. For me, I was going down the other way to be a personal assistant for the rest of my life. That's how life was. So at that point, I thought to myself, I said, you know what? I'm in trouble again. How could I have gone to campus? And I mean, with no offense to anyone who's a personal assistant, but this is my story. How could I have gone to campus, gone to the same class with these guys, because some education courses were shared. We hustled together in campus, and then somebody tells me that I cannot make it. No, I'm sorry. I disagree with that. I am going to fight in this jungle. So what I decided to do was to look for an opportunity. It did not matter whether the opportunity had money. I was going to look for an opportunity that would change my career. So the first thing I did was that I signed up and started doing what you call, they were called CPS. I think the course is still there, Certified Public Secretary. But with that, you do a bit of, some of the papers I sat for were financial management, tax, law, and so on. So I decided to do that to kind of put a business angle to my degree, and I started that course. So I did section 1, section 2, I skipped section 3 because I thought it was a bit difficult. I did section 4, then I decided to come back to section 3 at some point. But again, here I was trying to pursue a business qualification because I had been told so many times that because you've done a Bachelor of Education degree, you'll not make it. So I did CPS 1, 2, and 4. Coincidentally, I was best student nationally on all the papers that I sat for. So what is this thing that I'm being told that I cannot make it? Anyway, let me digress a bit. Ipsos wrote me a letter, and they said that congratulations for being the best student nationally. We're giving you a token of, I think it was about 500 bob. So I got the first letter, which was for section 1. I ignored. I was like, I go all the way to Upper Hill, and that time Upper Hill was so far, to pick 500 bob, and they're not going to give it to me in cash. It was going to be a check. I bank it, and I think that time you'd be charged 100 bob to clear a check. I was like, you know what, it's all worth it. So the second time I got a check, I got the award, I got a check again of 500. I said, I'm not going to pick it up. In fact, they were not even posting it. They wanted me to pick it up. So I said, to hell, I'm not picking it up. So the third time I got an award, I got a call. I think he was the CEO of Ipsos then, I can't remember his name. And he asked me, why aren't you picking your checks? So I told him, with due respect, the letter is enough for me to get recognized. I don't even need to pick the cash because I have a letter signed by you saying congratulations, you're the best student nationally. I don't need the money. Anyway, cutting the long story short, the value of my award was changed from 1,500 for the 3 papers to 7,500, and I took a bus and I went to Upper Hill. I picked my check and I banked it, and after that I did my hair, I bought clothes, you know, what a young person could do. So that's me. I always negotiate for something better. Anyway, so at that point I decided, you know what, I'm going to look for an opportunity where I could get some experience rather than pursuing money. So what did I do? I had a friend who used to work for a company called SBO Research, and she used to tell me there are so many people from campus who come here, we give them jobs, why don't you try it out? So I told my parents I was quitting my job and I needed them to subsidize my lifestyle, and they said fine. And I used to work at the supermarket and also work at SBO Research, and I worked there for 9 months. I was a field interviewer. So when I say that we go to the field, I know what it means to go to the field as a researcher. Then over and above that, what happens as a field interviewer, you do field work for 3 or 4 days. When the project is over, you have some time where you're not busy, and then you wait to be called again. What I did was that when I was free, I requested that I volunteer at SBO Research and work for a small fee. And I used to be paid 250 Kenya shillings per day. So if I worked for 10 days, I would get 2,500. If I worked at the supermarket for 10 days, I would get 10,000. But I decided this is a career this was more interesting, and I worked there for a small fee. But one of the key things that was an advantage for me is that I take very good notes, handwritten. And when we used to have what you call focus group discussions, my role was to take notes, and then the notes would be given to the typist, and the typist would type them, and then they would be given to the people writing the report. But the people writing the report realized that my handwriting was so good, they didn't have to wait for the stuff to be typed. They would actually be able to write a report using my notes. So I got a lot of that. I used to take a lot of notes. Then at one point, I was assigned to work with the managing director of SBO Research then. She was doing a very sensitive study. It was a study with, it was an employee satisfaction study, but the study required that focus groups were done with staff, and the staff members refused to be recorded. Meaning that once the group was over, there was no way of coming to recheck what the respondents had said. So they had to look for somebody who could take good notes. So if you take good notes, it's a very good skill. So I used to take notes, I would write them, and then I would give them to her, and then she'd write the report. So at some point I asked her, could I please help you write the report? Okay, she said, fine, you give it a try. And I really did my best. And when I gave her my first version of the summary for a group, she was impressed, and I was co-opted to work with her in the report writing. However, my salary did not increase because my notes were better, or my task had changed. I was still earning 250 Kenya shillings, not for note taking, but for writing summaries and report writing. But I did not complain. For me, I was desperate. Please remember that in my mind, I'm thinking of the jungle, 1,000 education students. How many people graduated with BCom? Engineering, there's no way I was going to survive. So I said, you know what? I don't give a damn, I will take the 250. And we wrote the report, and we wrote the report. So what I would say is that, and I always tell young people, if you look for opportunities to do much more than what you're required, you could actually find that this is the thing that will make or break your career. And this was actually the career breaker for me. So my next life was with Mr. Stedman. That's Roger Stedman, the founder of the Stedman Group, which then became Synovate, which is now Ipsos. So I met Roger Stedman. So what happened was I put in my CV with preferred personnel, and preferred personnel then shortlisted me for an interview with the Stedman Group then. When I went for the interview, I actually was in the same interview panel with my colleagues at Kenyatta University and Nairobi University who had a BCom degree. And here I was with my education degree. So I was like, okay, now let me tell you the best thing that happened. We were given an aptitude test, and the aptitude test was that you were given some transcript of a focus discussion, and we were asked to prepare a summary report. I mean, that was a walkover for me. I was looking at these becomes, sweating. I did my paper, and I was done. And I walked out knowing that I had gotten that job. So when I got a call from the organization, I was excited because I knew this was it. And that's how I joined Stedman. When I joined Stedman, I worked in our Nairobi office for 6 months, and then a position fell vacant in Uganda. Now, here's a conversation I overheard. Let me backtrack. So I was offered the job to be a research manager and move to Uganda. I've only been at Stedman for 6 months, and I've been offered a job to go to Uganda 6 months later to head the research unit there. So I said, wow, this is fantastic. So I was ready to pack my bags, and the day before I was supposed to travel to Uganda, I was going to the HR manager's office to pick my appointment letter, and before I opened the door, I don't know, something told me to pause. So I stood outside the door, and I could hear the conversation in the HR manager's office, and I had, let me not say their names, I had the senior managers talking about me. And the discussion was that, should we send her to Uganda? But she didn't have experience. Then somebody said, you know what, we've got nobody to send. None of the senior managers wants to go because they have families. Let's take a risk. If she fails, we'll bring her back, and we'll send somebody. We'll have gotten time to recruit somebody. So imagine, I was excited, and then this is a conversation you overhear. So let me talk about my early Stedman days. You see, maybe I'm still an underdog. My salary moved from 25K, I'm an expatriate, it's gone to 40K only. Huh? I'm an expatriate, but let's move on. So, I used to work, when I went to Uganda, I worked very hard. I used to be in the office by 6 a.m., and I'd work up to 9 p.m. That was every day. I did that every day. I also had a mentor in Nairobi. She was then the research director. I think would have calls every day on what I needed to do. And by the time I was 29, I had become country manager. What happened is that in my first year of being in Uganda, the business grew by 35%. The second year, the business grew by 33%. The third year, by 30%. My salary was also growing at a higher pace. So after the first year, when I came to Nairobi for my appraisal, everyone said, you surprised all of us. What drove you? I said, no, I'm just passionate about the job. I didn't tell them that I had overheard them planning to exit me from Uganda. And that's how I made it. But over and above that, I was in Uganda for 5 years. For those who know Uganda, it's a very small village. In the morning, you have a meeting with the client in the morning. You go for lunch at a restaurant, you meet the same client. You go to the supermarket before you go home to buy milk and bread, you meet the same client. I mean, it's a very small community. On Saturday and Sunday, when you're going to church or parties, you still meet the same people. So I felt it was a very small environment. And I then decided to identify people that I was going to train, and I decided I was going to get myself out of this job. So I trained somebody or people who were able to take up my job. And at some point, I called my boss in Nairobi, and I told him, you know what? I'm done with Uganda, and I want to come back. And my boss said, sorry, I don't have a job for you. So I said, okay, fine. I've done my part here. In 6 months, if you don't have somebody here, I'm actually quitting. I'm going to come to Nairobi, and I'm going to hustle. I've done it before. Anyway, they got me a job in Nairobi, and I came to Nairobi. So I think if you decide failure is not an option for you, then you will succeed. For me, one of the things I say, failure is not in my vocabulary. If people say I cannot make it, that is enough to motivate me to make it. And hard work. Honestly, if I wish I could work as hard as I did then, in 1999, 2000, I think I would be a millionaire. But I think age has caught up with me.